Okay, for today, right, we are going to focus more on the air as well as the pollutants in our air. Okay, so this one, right, actually is going to be your very last chapter in your textbook. If you have the blue color, the purple color textbook, it's called Maintaining Air Quality. So I split that up into two different lessons. This is going to be the first part, then the next week will be the second part. And you'll realize that it's very not chemistry like it's very geography like. Yeah. Okay. So learning objectives, basically you need to know what is the composition of our air because air is a mixture, right? You need to know what is the percentage of air that is, maybe oxygen, nitrogen, etc. And what are the common pollutants, how they are formed, and what is the effect of these pollutants. So all this is all memory work one. Okay, and then what are certain methods that you can use to minimize air pollution? So this second part, the last part, right, actually is really specific to pure chem students. So you all need to know. Okay, okay, so we go through very quickly first the composition of air. So the air that you are breathing in now is basically a mixture. Those are need to know. Okay, and generally, right, your air is comprised of two gases, mostly of two gases. Your nitrogen, which is N2, and oxygen, which is O2. Okay, and this one you need to memorize the percentage composition also. Okay, this one is in terms of volume. Okay, so the air is made up of 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. If you are interested, you can add them together and you'll find out that actually these two gases sum up to about 99% of your volume of air. Means the remaining is only 1%, very, very small only. Okay, so then the other one that you need to focus on will actually be your carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is 0.04%. This one must memorize also. So those values that you see here, you memorize, except for the other only. Okay, this one must memorize, this one must memorize, this one must memorize. Okay, I think in the previous syllabus, maybe about like 3 years ago, the carbon dioxide percentage was 0.03. Yeah, then now becomes 0.04. So you can figure out why it's increasing. Okay, the remaining part of the air, right, aside from your nitrogen and oxygen, is actually made up of noble gases. So noble gases, if you can recall what they are found on the very right side of your periodic table. Things like your helium, neon, argon, etc., etc. But out of all the noble gases, argon is the most abundant one. Okay, that's why I focus more on argon here. Okay, and it makes up to about almost 1% of your air. Okay, so important one is these three. So there are a few notes that I hope you all can remember, and it's the general mistakes that I do see students making over the years. Okay, number one is that hydrogen gas is actually not naturally occurring in our air. Yeah, so I have to remember that hydrogen is not part of our atmosphere. Okay, so the next thing is to know is that for your air, okay, since it's a mixture, right, there is a way for you to go and separate out the components in your air. Okay, the method is as follows. Okay, you need to liquefy the air first. So the word very cheap and very fantastic, liquefaction of air. Okay, you need to liquefy the air first, followed by fractional distillation. So these two steps. So going through a little bit more about what these two steps are. Okay, very first step, you need to liquefy your air. So air, right, is a mixture of gases. You need to convert everything into a liquid form. So what you need to do is you need to cool the air down to approximately this temperature. I don't think you need to memorize this temperature lah. Okay, just need to know the general steps involved. Okay, so cool the air down to about negative 80 degrees Celsius. Why this temperature, right, is because it helps you to remove two of the gases. Number one is water vapor, because water vapor basically is just gaseous water, which we know will freeze at zero, boil at 100 degrees. So if I cool the air down to negative 80, my water vapor will freeze. Okay, it will become solid ice. And then carbon dioxide is another gas that will actually what we call deposit. Okay, it will deposit because carbon dioxide doesn't exist in liquid state in our environment, in this atmosphere. Okay, so sublimation is solid to gas, gas to solid is called deposition, so it will deposit. Okay, so these two gases will convert into a solid state, and then it's easy to remove them out of this mixture. So the remaining gases that you are left with is like your N2, your O2, carbon dioxide gone already, your noble gases, etc. Okay, so this is the remaining gases that will remain. Okay, and then you increase the pressure, so pressurize it, so increase pressure. And when you increase pressure, right, You just think about it from the particle point of view. In kinetic particle theory, we know that for gases, they are very far apart. So when I try and pressurize it, I try and squeeze all the particles nearby, near to each other, then they will reform all the attractive forces. That's why it will become a liquid. Don't need to know too much about why lah. Okay, just know that when you increase pressure, your gases sometimes can convert back to liquid state at very very high pressure. Okay, so this is basically called the liquefaction of air. I have managed to convert all these into liquid state. Then after that, I want to separate them. So once everything is a liquid, right, they are miscible liquids. They basically just exist as one phase, one liquid phase. So all these are liquids that can mix together, and the way that you can separate these liquids out is fractional distillation. So that's why this one is part two. Okay, once you convert all to liquids already, you do fractional distillation. You control the temperature very well, such that you only allow one gas to boil over at one time. Then you can collect your respective gases already, lor. Okay. Over here, you don't need to memorize this one. So it's just to share with you only lah. Nitrogen out of all of them have the lowest boiling point, so it will distill over first, then followed by argon and then oxygen. Okay, but if any question needs you to go and write down the order of which gas will distill over first, they will give you the boiling point one. So you do not need to memorize the boiling point. Okay. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up what you need to know about air as well as its composition. Then we'll move on to the next part, which is going to talk about our air pollutants lah. Okay, so air pollutants, what are they? They are actually gases that do not naturally occur in our air. Okay, and this is the first part here. Okay, and they must cause harm to the environment or to living things lah. Okay, so as long as any gas fulfills these two requirements, right, they are considered as air pollutants. Okay, so with this, right, please take note, this is the second one that a lot of us only mistake. Carbon dioxide is not an air pollutant because it does cause harm to the environment, but it's also one of the gases that naturally occur in our atmosphere. So this one doesn't feel like. So that's why carbon dioxide is not an air pollutant. It's not very important. Okay. So air pollutants, right, usually it can be produced due to human activity or other processes. It can be natural processes as well. Okay, so there are a few air pollutants that you need to memorize on. You need to know what they are, what are the properties that they have, how they are formed, and what is the impact. Why are they harmful? Okay, you need to memorize one. I will highlight three of them that is very, very important. You need to remember one. Then there are others that are not so important, but of course, if you can memorize them, it's better. Okay. Number one, the very important one, please memorize this. The very first air pollutant that you need to know is carbon monoxide. Okay, carbon monoxide has the formula CO. Okay, this gas, right, is colorless, odorless. So no color, no smell one. Okay, but it is poisonous. So it is like a silent killer lah. Okay, if you get exposed too much, you get exposed to too much carbon monoxide, you might pass away without even knowing it lah. It's very, very dangerous because you cannot detect it by your sight or smell. Okay. So what or how is carbon monoxide formed? You just need to know that it is formed during incomplete combustion. Okay. So combustion basically is a process where you burn something in oxygen gas. Okay, but when you do not have enough oxygen gas, so this one is not enough O2 gas during combustion. Okay, then you start to form, you start to undergo this thing called incomplete combustion. And one of the products that you form actually is your carbon monoxide, okay, of carbon-containing fuels. Okay, so all those what petrol or if you do not give enough oxygen to burn it and release energy, you end up forming carbon monoxide instead. Okay, so that's how this guy is being formed. Okay, so once we know how this guy is being formed, we see what does it actually do to us when we are exposed to carbon monoxide. So this thing, right, this carbon monoxide actually binds to hemoglobin. I think I might have a small spelling error here. So I think the one that they need you all to spell in school is the British spelling. So it's like HAEMOGLOBIN. So I have the extra A there. Okay, so hemoglobin, right, is actually this substance in your red blood cells that helps you to attach oxygen. So I don't know whether you all take bio or not, but I'll just go through very briefly. Your red blood cells' purpose in your body is to capture oxygen from your lungs and then bring it to the rest of the body. So this whole thing is called oxygen transport. Okay, because the rest of your body, whether it's your tissues, your brain, your heart, they all need oxygen to function. So this thing, this hemoglobin, binds the oxygen at your lungs and then is able to release the oxygen to your tissues. But what happens when you breathe in too much carbon monoxide, right? This carbon monoxide also goes into your bloodstream and then it also binds to the very same thing that helps to transport your oxygen. But the problem is, right, this binding is irreversible. So it's irreversibly bind. Which means, right, the moment it attached to your hemoglobin, it cannot come off already. Which means if it binds to the hemoglobin, it's pretty much useless already. That same red blood cell cannot be used to go and transport oxygen anymore. Okay, and when you're exposed to very high amounts of carbon monoxide, imagine like almost your entire body, all the red blood cells and their hemoglobin is bound to this carbon monoxide. You have nothing left to go and transport oxygen anymore. So it affects your body's ability to transport oxygen to the rest of the body, and then the rest of your body do not have enough oxygen. So all the tissues start to die off, brain start to die off, your heart start to die off, and then that's how death will occur due to overexposure of carbon monoxide. Okay, so result in tissue damage and death. Okay, and it also causes breathing difficulty. But the most important one I want you all to remember is the irreversible binding. So the key to always mention is irreversible binding. Okay, and then affect oxygen transport. Okay, as long as you say this in your answer to explain how carbon monoxide affects you, you should be getting the mark already. Okay, and then of course what tissue damage and death. Okay, so that's the very first pollutant that you need to be familiar with. Okay, second one is this one. Also another one, please go and memorize one. Okay, this second one and the third one, right, is almost like one pair because you will notice that their effect is the same one. So it's like really, you can group them together. Okay, the second one here is called sulfur dioxide. Okay, so sulfur dioxide is a colorless but a pungent gas. It smells like rotten eggs. So I don't know why. I always ask my students whether they've been near any volcano before. I think nobody goes near a volcano to like sightsee when they go over there. But yeah, last time I went there, it really smelled like that. Okay, so the gases there smell like this. Okay, rotten egg smell and very smelly. Okay, so there are two ways you can actually form your sulfur dioxide. One of it is man-made or a human-caused production of sulfur dioxide. The other one is natural one. So you take a look at the natural one now. Okay, it is formed during volcanic eruptions or near volcano areas or areas near volcanoes. Okay, so that's why I always ask people whether they go near volcano. Okay, so natural way is volcanic eruptions. The man-made way is also through combustion. Instead of talking about carbon-containing fuels, this one is sulfur-containing fuels. Okay, so if you burn something that contains sulfur, you tend to form sulfur dioxide. So this is the man-made reason why we form sulfur dioxide. Okay, these two. Okay, so this one is how it's formed. Then the next 2 points will tell you what is the impact on human health as well as the environment. So in terms of human health, it causes breathing difficulty. Okay, and in terms of the environment, very important one, forms acid rain. Because sulfur dioxide is an acidic oxide, if you recall from your acid page. Okay, so acidic oxide, because it's a non-metal oxide and it has more than one oxygen, so this is acidic oxide. When you produce too much of this sulfur dioxide and it goes up into the atmosphere, and then imagine there's rain now, so this acidic oxide can dissolve in the rainwater, form acid rain to whatever that falls down, your rain will become acidic already. Okay. So it forms acid rain, but the consequences is not that it forms acid rain. The consequences is what does acid rain cause? So acid rain, when it touches things that like a buildings that are made out of metal or limestone, okay, can cause corrosion, okay, of metal and limestone buildings. Because acid can react with metal, acid can react with carbonate. Okay, limestone is our calcium carbonate. Okay. Now when the rain falls into your water bodies with all the fish and all that, right? It can affect your aquatic life. Okay, so can cause a death, death in like your fish and your underwater plants, all that, because you're affecting the pH of the water body. This will affect aquatic life. Can damage agriculture as well. If you're a farmer, then you have rain come down onto your agriculture and then it seeps into the soil and it's acidic, right? Some of the plants cannot survive in very acidic